So it was day 24, and I sort of woke up at the school at Elam at around about, I think, 6 to 7 o'clock. So it was a little bit later than normal, considering that normally I was kind of up around or between 2 and 4 o'clock, ready to get going quite early. So I got up, sorted all my kit, boiled some water, so I had some hot water in my thermos, filled all my water, had a bit of a snack on some of the food that was left over there. And then the school counsellor who we spoke to the night before brought down some beef brisket and some eggs. So we had another fresh cook-up breakfast. After that, we sort of started to get everything ready, set up everything outside the school as the students were coming in, and started to get back on the trail. So by now, it's kind of 9, 10 o'clock. We've burnt a little bit of the day, more than what I'd normally like, but considering that I was sort of somewhere around 830 miles or 1,330 kilometres along the trail, and I knew I had probably 150 miles left maximum, I wasn't too concerned. So we set up, got back outside. From there, the trail went down into the village, straight onto the sea ice. So out onto the sea ice, and the sea ice was a little bit tricky because it was mostly just smooth ice. So I had some sort of spikes or over spikes for my shoes that gave a little bit of a grip, but they didn't give me perfect grip. So there was still a little bit of sliding here and there, and just not a real high amount of confidence every time I took a step. So I sort of was out there for a while. My hips and back started to hurt just because of the adjustments that I'd made in my gait. So after a couple of hours out there, it sort of came off the sea ice, and then there was quite a large sort of set of hills, or a little bit of a hilly area between us and the inlet or the bay on the other side, which the village of Golovin was sort of set in on. So as we climbed up out of the sea ice, there's a little bit of a cabin there, so I stopped there for probably 30-40 minutes, had a bit of a feed, just set myself, and from there it was sort of starting to climb up the hill. So I was quite happy to be back on normal trail, but the initial climb was pretty steep and it got pretty hot. So coming out of there, I was very cautious not to sweat because I knew further up the hills were quite exposed and it was starting to get pretty windy. So if I was sweating too much and I got up there, then I'd run into a few problems. So sort of climbed out of the wooded area and then up onto the top of the hills, and they were really exposed and it started to get really windy. So it wasn't too hot, but the wind was cutting through everything. So it was a real mix between trying not to overheat and then making sure I was protected enough from the wind. So I spent a few hours kind of climbing a couple peaks there, and it was that exposed you could sort of see the peak that you had to get across a couple miles away. So you're just kind of cutting across or winding up through several sort of high areas or contouring the terrain, down one side, back up the other side. And I think there was 2 to 3 climbs or peaks that we had to get over, and then from there it was down the other side, back onto the sea ice that led to the village of Golovin. So as we got onto the sea ice, you could come around a corner and you could see Golovin about 6 miles away. So it looked probably about 1 or 2 miles away because you could make a little bit of it out, but I knew just by the tracking apps I had that I was still a fair way off. So it was about 2 hours walking across more sea ice, just looking at this town, not getting any closer. So it was kind of a bit monotonous. I was watching the sun go down and I was hoping I'd get there before sunset and be able to stay there for the night. So as I sort of got closer, you could start to make it out after about an hour and a half, as well as within about 1.5 miles away from it. And then the trail started to contour around the village a little bit, and we got there just as the sun was setting, and a couple of school teachers came down who'd been tracking us to greet us coming off the ice. And with them they brought our mailboxes. They got the local store owner to open up so we could buy a little bit of fresh food, and then showed us up to where there was sort of a spare cabin that we were allowed to stay in. So we went up there. The cabin itself actually had pretty good sleeping arrangements. It didn't have any running water, but we were able to get some water to boil up for cooking. We were able to refill all our water and reset everything and dry out anything that may have got water in it from sweating throughout the day. Through one of our conversations with the school teacher, who was also a local hunter, he actually brought us up some caribou stir fry. So we had another fresh meal here. And then we were sort of looking at what the next couple of days might look like. So for me, we're now at mile sort of 857 or around 860 miles in, or kind of 1,380 kilometres. And I knew that we probably had around about 80 miles left or 90 miles left. And for me, I could do that in 2 days if it was good conditions. I'd only really done 27 miles today, or 43 kilometres, but it was a shorter day. So I thought if I got a good rest here, got up early, I can cover the rest of the time in 2 days. So I was willing to go for it. But the risk was we didn't want to blow it out and then turn up to Nome at 2:30 in the morning. So we had a bit of a discussion about what we were going to do, and I decided to go for it. okay, I was going to get up early and go for it, and Ryan thought it was worth a shot. So we're just going to see how we went over the next day, and then from there we'd make a decision as to how we were going to tackle the last day heading to Nome. So it was into bed as early as I could with the intent of getting up early and really sort of trying to push out the final distance in the next 2 days and see how I'd go.